The jet hummed smoothly as we soared above the clouds, champagne bubbles fizzing in my glass while I leaned back into the plush leather seat. The private cabin was filled with the low murmur of conversation, laughter, and the subtle clinking of glasses. This was my world, where power, money, and influence blended seamlessly into luxury. I barely glanced as Nathan, my husband, was escorted off the plane. His stunned expression was satisfying in a way I wasn't willing to analyze too deeply. He had looked at me, waiting for an explanation, some form of kindness. But I merely arched a brow and said, "Only family is allowed on this flight, Nathan. You'll have to leave." He hadn't argued. He hadn't even looked angry. He had just nodded. I expected more. Anger. Frustration. A demand to know why I was doing this. But Nathan? He simply turned, grabbed his carry-on, and walked down the steps onto the tarmac, out of sight. A small, bitter part of me wanted him to fight for his place beside me. But he didn't. And that confirmed everything. Across from me, Ethan smirked over the rim of his drink. His sharp, confident posture, his perfectly tailored navy suit, and the way his fingers tapped idly on the armrest, it was a quiet display of control. Ethan had a way of making himself the center of every room without even trying. That went smoother than expected, he mused, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. I exhaled, forcing a nonchalant smile. Nathan has always known his place. It wasn't entirely true. If anything, Nathan had spent years thinking he was my equal, the kind of man who could build beside me. He was brilliant in ways I would never admit to his face. His mind was a labyrinth of codes and ideas, the architect behind NovaSync's most valuable software. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Nathan didn't belong in this world. He wasn't polished like Ethan. He wasn't ruthless. He wasn't a strategist. He didn't understand that the only way to truly win in business was to control every piece on the board, even the people you supposedly loved. That's why I chose Ethan. The flight attendants moved around us, offering refills and ensuring everything was perfect for our 3-hour flight to the private retreat. The sun cast golden streaks across the sky, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief. The last year had been exhausting. Balancing Nathan's growing presence in my company with my relationship with Ethan had become suffocating. Nathan had started asking questions, digging into meetings he wasn't supposed to be part of, acting as if he had a right to make decisions. So I did what I had to do. I removed him. "Relax, Olivia," Ethan murmured, his hand brushing lightly over my thigh beneath the table. "By the time we land, Nathan will be a distant memory." I smirked, taking a sip of my champagne. "He already is." The retreat was nestled in the mountains, a secluded haven designed for industry leaders, billionaires, and politicians who needed to make decisions away from the scrutiny of the public. Ethan and I were the perfect power couple, young, ambitious, and at the peak of our influence. The evening cocktail party was in full swing, laughter and smooth jazz blending under the dim glow of chandeliers. I was untouchable. I had it all: money, power, and the right man by my side. Nathan had been a necessary stepping stone. But stepping stones get left behind. I was mid-sip of my martini when my phone buzzed. The name flashing on the screen made my blood freeze. Nathan. Why was he calling me? I ignored it, slipping my phone back into my clutch. But a minute later it buzzed again. Then again. And then a text appeared on my screen. "Olivia. Call me. Now." Something was wrong. I frowned, stepping away from the noise and into the corridor where the air was quieter. My fingers hovered over my phone, debating. I could just ignore him. Let him simmer in whatever pathetic attempt at dignity he had left. But my gut twisted with something unpleasant. And then a second text. "I hope you enjoyed the flight, Liv. You won't enjoy what happens next." A chill ran down my spine. Before I could react, Ethan appeared beside me, pressing a light kiss to my temple. "Everything okay?" I plastered on a smile. "Fine. Just Nathan being dramatic." But deep down I wasn't so sure. The moment I stepped back into the party, I forced my best smile. The kind that hid every doubt, every flicker of uncertainty. This was my world. My victory. Nathan's message? A desperate last gasp from a man who had lost everything. Or so I told myself. Ethan's hand slid around my waist as he guided me back toward the center of the room. "Forget him," he murmured into my ear. his breath warm against my skin. Tonight is about us. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to let the champagne, the music, the sheer power of this night wash away whatever strange unease had settled in my stomach. But as the hours ticked on, I found myself checking my phone more than I wanted to admit. No more messages from Nathan. No follow-up. Just silence. That should have been a good thing. Should have meant that he had finally accepted his place. Yet somehow that silence felt louder than anything he could have said. The next morning, I woke up to Ethan already on the phone. His expression tight, pacing near the floor-to-ceiling windows of our suite. Sunlight streamed through, highlighting the sharp lines of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. "What do you mean we're locked out?" His voice was low, controlled, but I knew him well enough to hear the underlying fury. "That software is the backbone of our analytics. Fix it." My stomach lurched. No, that was impossible. I sat up, gripping the sheets as I tried to process what I had just heard. Ethan shot me a look, his blue eyes flashing with something unreadable before he turned away, listening intently to whoever was on the other end of the call. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling slightly as I unlocked the screen. And there it was. A flood of missed calls, frantic messages from my team, from the board, all echoing the same chilling reality. The system was down. "Nathan." I barely had time to breathe before Ethan hung up and turned to me. "Did you know about this?" His tone was sharp, accusatory, as if I had somehow orchestrated this disaster. "Of course not," I snapped, swinging my legs over the side of the bed, already dialing my CTO. The call went straight to voicemail. Panic bubbled up inside me, but I shoved it down, forcing my mind to focus. He couldn't do this. Nathan wasn't even. I stopped myself. Because the truth was, I had never really known how much power Nathan had within NovaSync. I had spent so much time pushing him aside, minimizing his contributions, that I hadn't considered the possibility that he had kept something for himself. Something that could ruin me. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, cursing under his breath. "Olivia, do you understand what this means? If our clients lose access to that software, if the investors catch wind of this before we fix it..." He didn't need to finish. I already knew. Billions were at stake. My reputation. My future. I sucked in a breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I'll handle it." I found Nathan's number in my recent calls and hit dial. The line rang once. Twice. Then he answered. "I was wondering when you'd call," Nathan said smoothly, his voice so calm it sent a shiver down my spine. "What the hell did you do?" I demanded, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. A low chuckle. "I took back what was mine." "You don't own NovaSync's software, Nathan. The company owns it." "I own it." "Do you?" There was amusement in his voice, but beneath it something colder. "You never really paid attention to the details, did you, Olivia? You were too busy pretending I didn't matter." "That I didn't matter." I felt Ethan step closer, listening, waiting. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to remain even. "Nathan, we can fix this. Just give me access back and we can talk about..." "No," he cut me off. "You made your choice when you kicked me off that plane. When you made it clear I wasn't family." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quiet but lethal. "So now I'm making my choice." The line went dead as I stared at my phone, my pulse hammering in my ears. The call was over, but Nathan's words echoed like a slow-burning threat, wrapping around my throat like a noose. Ethan was watching me closely, arms crossed, his jaw tight with barely contained fury. "Well?" he demanded. I exhaled through my nose, steadying myself. "He's not going to give us access." Ethan let out a sharp laugh, but there was no humor in it. "No kidding. What did he say?" I hesitated, not wanting to admit the truth, not wanting to acknowledge just how much control Nathan still had. "He said it's his now." Ethan's eyes darkened. "That son of a..." He stopped himself, rubbing a hand over his face before turning toward the window. I could see the wheels turning in his head, calculating, strategizing. This was a disaster and we both knew it. The software Nathan had locked down wasn't just a system. It was the system. The foundation of NovaSync's entire data infrastructure. Without it, every high-profile contract, every client relying on our analytics, every investor who had poured money into the company, Everything was in jeopardy. My company was in jeopardy. I took a deep breath, willing my voice to stay even. "We have options," I said, though even I wasn't sure what they were. "He's just trying to scare us. I'll call legal, have them pull up his contracts, find a way to force his hand." Ethan turned to me, his expression unreadable. "And if we can't force his hand?" He didn't say it, but I heard what he really meant. What if Nathan outmaneuvered us? What if this wasn't just some petty tantrum but something bigger, something I hadn't accounted for? I clenched my fists, refusing to entertain the thought. No, that wasn't possible. Nathan was brilliant, yes, but I was the one who had built NovaSync into what it was today. I was the one who had made the right alliances, who had turned an idea into an empire. He was just the man behind the curtain, the one whose name no one ever really remembered. I straightened my shoulders. "We'll fix it," I said with more confidence than I felt. "He's still my husband. He won't let everything burn." Ethan scoffed. "Are you sure about that? Because from where I'm standing it looks like he already has." The words stung, but I ignored them. I couldn't afford to doubt myself now. I needed control, needed to regain my footing before Nathan dragged me under. I dialed my CTO again. Straight to voicemail. My fingers tightened around my phone as I sent a curt message. "Get back to me. Now." If Nathan had locked him out too, we were in even deeper trouble than I thought. Ethan grabbed his jacket. "I need to make some calls. If we can't break into the system, we need a backup plan." "What kind of backup plan?" I asked, but he was already halfway out the door. "One that doesn't involve begging your ex for scraps." He shot over his shoulder before disappearing down the hallway. I exhaled sharply, shoving my phone into my bag. I hated feeling powerless. Hated feeling like the world I had built was suddenly slipping through my fingers because of a mistake. No, a miscalculation. Kicking Nathan off that plane had been symbolic, a clean break, a final statement of where we stood. But I had underestimated him. I had assumed he would do what he always did. Accept his place, accept my decision. And now for the first time, I was realizing that Nathan wasn't just walking away. He was pulling the entire foundation of NovaSync down with him. A sharp knock at the door made me jump. I turned, expecting Ethan, but instead it was one of the retreat staff, a young woman with a polite but strained expression. "Mrs. Langley?" I stiffened. "Yes." She hesitated before handing me a folded note. "This was left at the front desk for you. No sender." I frowned, unfolding the paper with cautious fingers. My stomach flipped as I read the words scrawled across the page in Nathan's familiar handwriting. "Did you really think I wouldn't have an exit plan?" My fingers clenched around the note as a slow, burning heat crept up my spine. The arrogance. The audacity. Nathan was toying with me, dangling his control over NovaSync like a cat playing with a wounded bird. He wanted me to feel powerless. He wanted me to know that I had underestimated him. I took a breath, steadying myself before looking up at the staff member. "When was this dropped off?" The young woman shifted uncomfortably. "Early this morning. The sender didn't leave a name. Just asked that it be delivered to you personally." My mind raced. Early this morning. That meant Nathan had planned this before I even made that phone call. Before I begged him to return what was mine. He had already set his trap and I had walked right into it. I forced a tight smile. "Thank you." She hesitated as if sensing the tension radiating off me, but gave a polite nod before retreating down the hall. The moment she was gone, I closed the door and read the note again, slower this time. "Did you really think I wouldn't have an exit plan?" Exit plan. The phrase sent a sharp pulse of unease through me. This wasn't just about locking us out. This wasn't just Nathan being petty or proving a point. He had planned this, which meant he had something bigger in motion. Something I hadn't foreseen. My first instinct was to call him, to demand answers, but I forced myself to stop. No, that was exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to chase, to panic, to react. Instead, I needed to think. I pulled up my phone, scanning the latest updates from my team. The panic was spreading. Reports of clients unable to access critical systems. Investors demanding explanations. One email from my head of PR simply read, "What do you want me to tell them?" I swallowed hard, scrolling through more frantic messages. And then, buried in the chaos, a single notification from our legal team. "Urgent. Nathan Carter has filed a claim regarding proprietary ownership of the AI analytics system, requesting immediate response. I felt the air rush from my lungs. No. He wasn't just locking us out. He was taking it. He had filed a legal claim, likely backed with documentation, contracts, whatever loophole he had buried in the fine print, while I was too busy playing CEO to notice. I shot up from my seat, pacing the room, my mind racing through every possible way to counter this. Ethan. I needed Ethan. He would know how to handle this. He would know how to fight back. I grabbed my phone, dialing him as I stormed toward the door. It rang. And rang. And rang. No answer. I cursed under my breath, shoving the phone into my bag. Fine. I'd find him myself. I stepped into the hallway, heels clicking against the polished marble as I made my way toward the meeting lounge where I knew he had gone to make his calls. But as I rounded the corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. Ethan was there. But he wasn't alone. He stood near the bar, phone in hand, posture tense, his free hand rubbing at his jaw in frustration. Across from him, a woman I didn't recognize sat perched on the edge of a leather chair. Her arms crossed, expression unreadable. And then Ethan said something that made my blood turn to ice. I told you we need another way. NovaSync isn't secure anymore. She doesn't even realize how bad it is yet. I stepped back, heart pounding. He wasn't talking about fixing this. He was talking about abandoning ship. About me not realizing how bad it was. About another way. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms as the pieces started clicking together. Nathan had made his move. But Ethan? He was making his own. And I was standing in the middle, watching my empire slip through my fingers. My breath came slow and steady. But inside, everything was unraveling. I had spent years perfecting my control, keeping every piece of my life exactly where I wanted it, bending people, deals, and circumstances to my will. Yet here I was, standing in a cold marble hallway, realizing I had been outmaneuvered not once but twice. Nathan had locked me out of my own company, filing claims that could take everything I built. And Ethan, the man I had chosen over him, was already looking for a way out, already talking like I was finished, like NovaSync was a sinking ship and he was preparing to abandon me before it dragged him under. I should have stormed into that lounge, demanded answers, made it clear that I was still in control, but I didn't. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked away. The steady click of my heels the only sound in the empty corridor. Let him think I didn't hear. Let him believe I was still blind to his betrayal. If Nathan and Ethan thought they had beaten me, they were wrong. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I returned to my suite, locking the door behind me as I paced, my mind working at a speed that matched the erratic pounding of my pulse. I needed information, leverage, anything that would put me back in control. I pulled up my phone, dialing my legal team before I could second-guess myself. The moment the call connected, I didn't bother with pleasantries. Tell me exactly what Nathan filed and what our options are. There was a pause, the kind that told me the answer wasn't one I wanted to hear. Then my attorney's voice came through, careful but firm. Olivia, it's bad. He didn't just file for proprietary ownership. He filed an injunction. Legally, we can't even touch the AI system until this is resolved. My stomach twisted, but I kept my voice neutral. And how long does that take? Another pause. Months, if not longer. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. That's not an option. I need control now. Unless you can prove outright fraud or breach of contract on his part, there's nothing we can do immediately, my attorney said. And Olivia. I looked through everything. It's airtight. Nathan knew exactly what he was doing. He's had this plan in motion for a while. I ended the call without another word, hurling my phone onto the bed as a slow rage curled inside me. Nathan had played me. He had been planning this long before I kicked him off that plane, long before I had even considered cutting him loose. I had thought I was discarding him, but the truth was he had been waiting for me to do it. He had wanted me to push him aside, to underestimate him so that when he made his move I wouldn't see it coming. And it had worked. I stared at the city skyline beyond the window, my mind spinning. Nathan thought he had won. Ethan was already planning his escape. My board was panicking. My investors were watching. But I wasn't out of the game yet. I had built NovaSync from nothing, and I would burn the entire thing to the ground before I let anyone steal it from me. I grabbed my phone again, my fingers moving swiftly as I typed out a message to Nathan. You think you've won? You haven't. Let's talk. I stared at the message for a moment before pressing send, my heart hammering in my chest. A minute passed. Then another. My phone buzzed and my breath caught as his response came through. We're past talking, Olivia. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I stared at Nathan's message, the cold finality of his words settling over me like a slow suffocation. He wasn't going to negotiate. He wasn't going to fold under pressure. He had drawn the line, and now he was daring me to cross it. My fingers hovered over the screen, itching to type back something sharp, something that would put me back in control, but I stopped myself. Emotion wouldn't win this battle. I needed leverage. I needed power. I needed to make Nathan need me before I lost everything. I called my CFO, my pulse pounding in my ears as the phone rang. The moment she answered, I didn't waste time. I need a full financial overview now. How much damage are we looking at? Her voice was strained, tight with barely contained panic. It's bad, Olivia. Clients are already threatening to pull contracts, and the board is calling for an emergency meeting. Investors want answers, and if we don't get the system back online, we could be looking at losses in the hundreds of millions by the end of the month. My grip on the phone tightened. No, that's not happening. We have backups. We have redundancies. We did, she said carefully. But Nathan was smart. His lockout didn't just shut down access, he disabled every single backup. There's no way around it. We need him, Olivia. I ended the call, my mind spinning with the weight of those words. We need him. The same man I had pushed aside. The same man I had humiliated. The same man I had let walk away believing he was nothing without me. I felt a sharp, bitter taste rise in my throat. No. I refused to believe I had no way out. There was always a way out. I needed to control the narrative before the situation got worse. I pulled up my contacts, scrolling until I found the number I needed. The head of PR answered on the second ring. Damage control, I snapped. I want a statement out in the next hour. Something clean. Something reassuring. No panic, no weakness. Frame this as a technical transition period, while we make internal improvements. That won't work, she said bluntly. Olivia, people know. Our biggest clients are already whispering to the press, and if we don't give them something real, this will spiral. Then find a way to control the spiral. I bit out. That's your job, isn't it? A long silence. Then a quiet, reluctant sigh. I'll do what I can. I threw my phone onto the bed, pressing my fingers against my temples as frustration burned through me. The walls were closing in. Nathan had positioned himself perfectly, and I had played right into his hands. The board would turn on me. The investors would lose faith. Ethan. I froze, my jaw clenching at the thought of him. Ethan knew. He had been looking for a way out before I even realized how deep this went. I grabbed my purse and stormed out of the suite, heading straight for his room. My fists pounded against the door. Ethan. Open the damn door. A long pause. Then the sound of the lock clicking. The door swung open, and there he was, standing in the dimly lit room, his expression unreadable. But I didn't miss the slight tension in his posture. He knew why I was here. I stepped inside, my voice sharp, cold. How long have you been planning to cut your losses? He didn't deny it. Didn't even flinch. Instead, he shut the door behind me and exhaled. Olivia, I told you, this is worse than you think. No, I shot back, my eyes burning with fury. This is exactly what I think. Nathan played his hand, and now you're looking for an escape route. But let me make something very clear, Ethan, if I go down, I'm taking you with me. He met my gaze, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I saw something unexpected. Not fear. Not regret. Pity. And that terrified me more than anything Nathan had done. Ethan's pity burned more than his betrayal, more than Nathan's revenge, more than the slow unraveling of everything I had built. He thought I was finished. He thought he could walk away. He thought I was just another powerful woman about to fall. Another cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms about arrogance and greed. I took a step closer, keeping my voice level, keeping the fury contained behind a mask of cold control. You think I can't survive this? I asked, watching him carefully. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Olivia, listen to me. Nathan didn't just pull the software, he pulled everything. He's been planning this for months, maybe longer. He has the legal ground. He has the board in a panic. He has you exactly where he wants you. I tilted my head, keeping my expression unreadable. And what about you, Ethan? Where do you stand in all of this? His lips pressed into a thin line, but I already knew the answer. He had been waiting for the right moment to cut his losses, waiting for the perfect opportunity to slip away before the ship sank. I told you, he said finally. We need another way. I scoffed. We? There is no we, Ethan. There never was. You were waiting for me to crash and burn so you could walk away clean, but guess what? You're not clean. You're deep in this. And if you think for a second that I'm going to let you slip away without consequences, then you're even dumber than I thought. His jaw clenched. That's not fair. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Oh, now we're talking about fairness? I turned away, walking toward the window, staring at the mountains in the distance. Tell me something, I said softly. Did Nathan get to you? Did he offer you a way out before all of this even started? Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, he didn't have to. The words were a slap to the face. Ethan had never been on my side. He had never needed a better offer because he had never planned on staying. Nathan had locked me out of my own empire, but Ethan had let it happen. The weight of my own miscalculations pressed against my ribs like a slow, suffocating vice. I had thought I was controlling the board, but I had been playing a different game entirely. I turned back to face him, my voice ice cold. Then you'd better hope Nathan has a place for you in whatever he's building, because as of now, you are no longer welcome in mine. Ethan's expression flickered, but I didn't wait for his response. I grabbed my purse, my phone, and walked out without another word, slamming the door behind me. My heels echoed down the empty hallway as I forced my mind to push past the betrayal, past the humiliation, past the raging storm inside me. I still had moves left to play. Nathan thought he had one. Ethan thought I was finished. But they had both forgotten one thing. I built NovaSync once. And I could build something even bigger. All I needed was the right weapon. And I knew exactly where to find it. I moved fast, my mind already racing through every possible move. Every weak point Nathan might have overlooked. He had planned this for months, had anticipated my reactions, had stripped me of control before I even realized the game had started. But no plan was perfect. There was always a flaw. Always something left behind. And I was going to find it. I reached my suite, locking the door behind me as I pulled out my laptop. My fingers moved instinctively, logging into my private server, a separate system I had kept for my own personal use, one that Nathan had no access to. If I couldn't take NovaSync back, I needed to destroy his leverage. I needed to make the software worthless without me. The moment I accessed my files, I saw it, my old development logs, encrypted blueprints of early versions of the AI system. Nathan had built the final iteration, but the foundation? That was still mine. If I could prove that NovaSync's core was built on my proprietary work, I could challenge his claim. I could launch my own legal counterattack, drag this fight into a battlefield he wasn't prepared for. But before I could execute anything, a notification popped up on my screen. A message. From Nathan. I knew you'd look here first. You're predictable, Olivia. But let me save you some time. Whatever you're thinking of doing, it won't work. A slow, seething fury crawled up my spine as I read his words. He was watching me, predicting my moves before I even made them. I stared at the screen, my grip tightening on the edge of the desk, my breath steady despite the fire raging in my chest. He thinks he's untouchable. He thinks I'll give up. I typed back, each keystroke slow and deliberate. You always did underestimate me, Nathan. Enjoy your little victory while you can. It won't last. I hit send and shut the laptop, knowing I was wasting time playing into his games. He was daring me to lash out, to make desperate mistakes, but I wasn't that kind of woman. I had built an empire out of nothing once, and if I had to, I would do it again. But this time I wouldn't just build something new. I would bury Nathan in the process. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Someone outside of NovaSync. Someone with resources. Someone who owed me. The call rang twice before a voice answered on the other end. Olivia. the man said smoothly. I was wondering when you'd call. I allowed myself a small, calculated smile. I need a favor. Let me guess, he mused. This is about Nathan. I leaned back in my chair, my grip on my phone tightening. I want everything you can find on him. Every deal he's made, every weakness, every mistake. I don't care what it costs, I want leverage. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. Now that's the Olivia I remember. Consider it done. I ended the call, my pulse steady, my mind already shifting into the next phase of my plan. Nathan had taken NovaSync from me. Ethan had betrayed me. The board had lost faith in me. But none of them understood what I was capable of when I had nothing left to lose. Nathan had backed me into a corner. But I was about to show him exactly why that was the biggest mistake of his life. The waiting was the worst part. I had made my move, set the pieces in motion, but now I had to sit back and let the game unfold. Nathan thought he had control, but he had forgotten one crucial thing: I never played fair. He believed he had trapped me, forced me into a losing position, but he underestimated just how ruthless I could be when backed into a corner. My contact was one of the best, a fixer who specialized in corporate warfare, and if there was a single crack in Nathan's armor, he would find it. I didn't just want NovaSync back. I wanted to rip apart whatever security Nathan thought he had, expose whatever secrets he had buried, and watch him realize that his so-called victory was nothing more than an illusion. I sat on the edge of my bed, my phone clutched in my hand, staring at the screen as I waited for the response that would tell me where to strike. The seconds stretched. The minutes dragged. Then finally my phone buzzed with a new message. Got something. You're going to like this. My heart kicked up as I opened the attachment. It was a set of documents, some legal, some financial, and one that made my blood run cold. A private investor contract between Nathan and an unknown third party. The details were vague, but the numbers weren't. Millions had been funneled into an offshore account under Nathan's name. All of it linked to a silent partner. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that Nathan had been making moves long before he left NovaSync, setting up secondary deals, positioning himself for something bigger. He hadn't just taken NovaSync software. He had been using it as leverage to secure private funding, preparing to launch a competing platform under his own name. The bastard wasn't just taking what was mine. He was planning to erase me. I gripped my phone tighter, forcing my breathing to stay even. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I wouldn't find this. But now I had the opening I needed. I clicked the call button without hesitation, barely giving Nathan a second to answer before I spoke. Clever, I said, keeping my voice smooth, controlled. I'll give you that. There was silence on the other end for half a beat. Then his voice came through, calm but wary. What are you talking about, Olivia? Don't insult me by pretending you don't know, I said, standing up and pacing toward the window. You weren't planning to keep NovaSync software. You were planning to replace it. You've been in talks with investors for months, setting up your little empire while you smiled in my face and played the part of the discarded husband. Another pause. Then a slow exhale. I always knew you were smart, Olivia. Just not this fast. I turned, my grip on the phone tightening. What's the endgame, Nathan? You think you can push me out and build something better? You think the board won't come after you for intellectual property theft once they find out you're selling their software to private investors? That's where you're wrong, he said smoothly. I'm not selling their software. I'm selling mine. His voice was so infuriatingly calm that I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Let me guess, I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. You tweaked a few lines of code, changed the interface, and suddenly it's an entirely new product? Something like that, he admitted. Enough to make it legally distinct. Enough to ensure that by the time you realize what's happening, I'll already have contracts signed and investors backing me. You're making a mistake, I warned. You think you're untouchable, but you're not. You think your investors are loyal, but they're not. They don't care about you, Nathan. They care about what you can offer them. The second you're not useful, they'll turn on you. I expected him to argue, to fight back, to deny it. But instead he just chuckled softly like he was amused. And yet, he said, I'm not the one panicking. You are. My blood went cold. I hadn't realized it, but my breathing had picked up. My voice had edged toward desperation, and he had heard it. He had felt it. Nathan had won the last battle and now he thought he had won the war. But he was wrong. This wasn't over. I took a slow breath, forcing steel into my voice. Enjoy this while it lasts, Nathan. Because when you fall, and you will fall, I'll be the one watching. I ended the call before he could respond, throwing my phone onto the bed as I clenched my hands into fists. He had the upper hand for now. But he had made one mistake. He thought I had nothing left to lose. He thought I was desperate. But desperation made people dangerous. And I was about to become the most dangerous person in his world. Nathan thought he had won, thought he had outmaneuvered me, thought that by the time I realized what was happening he would be untouchable. He had spent months preparing for this, lining up investors, securing funding, rewriting the software just enough to make it legally distinct from NovaSync's original system. He thought I would be forced to watch from the sidelines as he took everything I built and made it his. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated just how far I was willing to go to destroy him. I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours making calls, pulling strings, cashing in every favor I had left. I reached out to former allies, to competitors, to anyone with a grudge against Nathan and a willingness to listen. I fed information to the right people, planted the right seeds of doubt, let the whisper of scandal spread just enough to make his investors hesitate. By morning, the first cracks had started to form. I knew because Nathan called me. I let the phone ring twice before answering, keeping my voice calm. "Nathan," I said smoothly. "What a surprise." His voice was tight, the first hint of unease slipping through. "What did you do?" I let out a soft laugh. "Oh, come on. You didn't think I was just going to sit back and let you win, did you?" Silence. Then a slow, measured breath. "You're making a mistake, Olivia." "Funny," I mused. "I was about to say the same thing to you." I could almost hear his jaw clenching on the other end of the line. "You think you can turn my investors against me? You think a few rumors will be enough to stop me?" "I don't need to stop you, Nathan," I said, walking toward the window, watching the city wake up below me. "I just need to remind people that you're a risk. And investors don't like risks, do they?" Another pause. A longer one this time. Then softer. "I should have ruined you when I had the chance." "You still think you have a chance," I said, amused. "That's adorable." He exhaled sharply, and I knew I had struck a nerve. Nathan had expected me to panic, to fight like a cornered animal. He hadn't expected me to go on the offensive. But I had learned a long time ago that the best way to win was to make sure the other person had nowhere left to run. I wasn't trying to take NovaSync back. I was making sure that if I couldn't have it, neither could he. The investors I had spooked would start pulling out within days. The contracts he was so sure of would begin to unravel. The pressure would mount. The cracks would spread. And then, when he was at his most vulnerable, when he realized that everything he had built was about to collapse beneath him, I would strike the final blow. "Walk away, Nathan," I said, my voice softer now, almost gentle. "Take what's left of your dignity and go before it's too late." His laugh was hollow. "You really think I'm just going to give up?" "I think you don't have a choice," I said simply. Another silence. A longer one this time. I knew he was weighing his options, trying to find a way out. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. Finally he spoke. "I never should have trusted you. That," I said, smiling to myself, "was your first mistake." I ended the call, tossing my phone onto the bed as I exhaled slowly. It was over. Nathan just didn't know it yet. But he would. Soon.